In an emotional revelation that sent waves through both Coldplay and BTS fandoms, Coldplay's frontman Chris Martin has opened up about a deeply personal decision made during the planning of the band's Buenos Aires concerts. In a behind-the-scenes interview that resurfaced online, Martin disclosed that the timing of their Argentina tour stop in 2022 was deliberately aligned with BTS member Jin's military enlistment in South Korea. His statement, "We did it because I really love that guy, I love that band, I love the story of it," has ignited an outpouring of admiration across the internet, reminding the world of the powerful connection between the two global music icons. This heartfelt confession has cast new light on Coldplay and BTS's collaboration for My Universe and Jin's solo single, The Astronaut, which Coldplay co-wrote and performed with him live in Buenos Aires just days before Jin officially began his military service. Fans now realize that what was initially seen as a scheduling coincidence was, in fact, a carefully crafted act of friendship, support, and artistic solidarity. Chris Martin's words weren't rehearsed or packaged. They were raw, genuine, and spoke volumes about how deeply Jin had impacted him. "He's not just a collaborator," Martin said during the interview. "He's a kind human being with a story worth honoring." And honor him he did. Jin's solo performance of The Astronaut, with Coldplay on stage in Buenos Aires, is now viewed with a whole new layer of emotional gravity. His farewell to fans, not just from BTS, but from around the world, wrapped in one of the most poignant send-offs ever seen in modern music. The fandom, both ARMY and Coldplayers, quickly lit up social media. Tweets with hashtags like #ChrisLovesJin, #JinTheAstronaut, and #MyUniverseForever trended for hours. Fans praised the sincerity of Martin's words, with many calling it one of the most beautiful gestures between two musicians ever documented. Beyond the music, this revelation signifies something rare: mutual respect across cultures, languages, and generations in the music industry. Chris Martin's admiration for Jin goes beyond the spotlight. It's about the man behind the fame. It's about loyalty, about acknowledging someone's sacrifice, and using the universal language of music to say goodbye, if only temporarily. This story isn't just about two artists. It's about how far kindness can travel. From Seoul to Buenos Aires, from studio recordings to farewell performances, Jin and Chris Martin have built a bridge, not only between K-pop and British rock, but between the hearts of millions who have followed their journey. And as Jin continues his post-military journey and Coldplay rides the wave of their ongoing legacy, fans can't help but wonder, will there be another collaboration? Will that quiet Buenos Aires promise spark yet another universe of music? For now, what remains is the warmth of that final bow, the echo of the crowd, and the simple truth Chris Martin left behind. I did it for Jin. The story of Jin and Chris Martin, now deeply etched into the emotional memory of millions of fans, continues to echo through every stream of The Astronaut and every lyric of My Universe. In a time when collaborations are often commercial and fleeting, there stood as a testament to sincerity, timing, and mutual respect. For Chris Martin to recalibrate an entire tour schedule for Jin was not just about logistics. It was a gesture of quiet admiration, one that transcended genre and geography. Insiders at the time hinted that Coldplay's Buenos Aires date wasn't random. The location, the energy, and the timing all coincided perfectly for a goodbye that would feel less like an ending and more like a celestial send-off. Jin, facing the emotional weight of leaving the stage behind for military service, could not have asked for a more poetic stage than Coldplay's Sea of Lights. And Chris, ever the empathetic soul, gave him that canvas to say farewell, not just to fans, but to music itself, if only for a little while. That moment when Jin stood next to Chris Martin on stage, nervous, grateful, shining, will forever symbolize what happens when artistry and empathy collide. Martin's admission years later only cements what fans already felt. This wasn't just a performance. It was a goodbye wrapped in love and amplified by music. As both artists continue their respective journeys, Jin returning to music post-enlistment and Chris Martin guiding Coldplay through their next chapter. Fans are hopeful for more. Not just more music, but more of that pure, heartfelt connection. If the stars align once again, maybe the universe will bring them back on stage, side by side, for something even bigger. Until then, ARMY and Coldplayers alike carry that one sentence like a badge of honor. I did it because I really love that guy. And maybe that's all it takes to remind the world that the greatest collaborations aren't built in studios. They're born in the quiet moments of real friendship. Since that unforgettable moment in Buenos Aires, fans haven't stopped talking about the bond between Jin and Chris Martin. It wasn't just two artists performing together. It was a rare glimpse into a friendship that felt genuine, rare, and deeply personal. Every time Chris Martin speaks about Jin, whether in interviews or live shows, there's a softness in his words, a warmth that doesn't need embellishment. It's as if he's talking about a younger brother who carved a place in his heart through sincerity and quiet strength. For Jin, that night wasn't only a performance. It was a way of saying goodbye to the stage for a while, wrapped in the safety and support of someone who understood what that goodbye meant. Chris Martin gave Jin something beyond a song. He gave him a space to be vulnerable, to shine one last time before stepping into the unknown. And maybe that's why ARMYs and Coldplayers continue to revisit that memory over and over again. Because in that one performance, they saw something rare in the music industry: mutual respect, emotional depth, and the courage to say, "This isn't business. This is love." Today, years later, the clip of Chris Martin saying, "We did it because I really love that guy," still brings fans to tears. It's quoted on fan art, printed on banners, and echoed in every corner of social media where ARMYs gather. It's become a symbol of Jin's impact, not only within BTS but across generations and genres. As fans await Jin's next chapter, whether it's another album, another world tour, or another collaboration, many quietly hope that Chris Martin will be part of it again. Because when someone tells the world that they changed a world tour to honor you, that's not just a tribute. That's a love letter in disguise. And for Jin, a man who often carries the weight of being BTS's eldest, that gesture was more than kind. It was healing. It was unforgettable. So, as the world watches BTS evolve, one thing remains certain: the story of Jin and Chris Martin will always be a shining example of what happens when music becomes friendship and friendship becomes history. The legacy of that Buenos Aires night has only grown stronger with time. Every mention of it in fan spaces feels less like nostalgia and more like a touchstone for what true artistry and friendship can achieve. The way Chris Martin has consistently spoken of Jin, not as an idol, not as a business partner, but as a human being with a story worth honoring, has elevated Jin's narrative beyond the borders of K-pop. It placed him in a universal light, where he is not simply the eldest of BTS, but a symbol of resilience, humility, and quiet brilliance recognized by one of the most respected musicians of this generation. For ARMY, this validation has been deeply emotional. Jin, who has often been overshadowed by louder personalities or underestimated in the early years of BTS, finally had his story spotlighted in the words of someone who didn't owe him anything. Chris Martin's declaration, "I love that guy, I love that band, I love the story of it," wasn't a press line. It was a confession, one that placed Jin's journey alongside Coldplay's decades-long legacy, equal in weight and worthy of remembrance. Even now, fans revisit that Buenos Aires performance not just for the music, but for the symbolism. They see Jin's nervous smile as he walked onto the stage, the way Chris placed a steadying hand on his back, and the way thousands of lights swayed like galaxies as the astronauts soared through the stadium. It was a farewell, but it was also a promise that even in absence, Jin's voice would continue to echo. And Chris Martin, knowingly or not, became the guardian of that promise. The music industry, often cynical and transactional, rarely allows moments of pure sincerity to shine through. Yet here, in the story of Jin and Chris Martin, Sincerity became the headline. It became a reminder that sometimes, beyond the contracts and schedules, music is still about human connection, about one artist seeing another, not for fame or streams, but for their heart. And in that sense, Chris Martin gave Jin something priceless: the acknowledgement that his story matters on the global stage. As Jin steps forward into his next chapter, fans continue to hope that their paths will cross again. But even if they never share a stage again, the memory of that night will endure, as will Chris Martin's words. Because when a legend of rock says he changed the rhythm of his world tour for you, it means you are more than an idol. You are, as Chris so simply put it, someone worth loving.